itself up. We know Mother Nature is forgiving, but there has to be a limit when she's going to stop forgiving us and start maybe retaliating against us.
I think there's a lot of resistance to the environmental link to cancer for a variety of reasons. One of them is that the doctors and the scientists want to be heroes and find a cure. In prevention, there is no money.
There's a globalization of the economy in which some fairly powerful multinational corporations really control what happens, how money is allocated, and for what it is allocated. They're stronger than many nation states.
The increase in breast cancer over the last few decades really is linked to the international economic structures, where they've valued more their economic interests over the life interests of people. And so that's why the companies that are dumping toxic waste all over the place are not being held accountable enough in a way that will look at the value of people in their life. And so what happens is that women are more vulnerable in these different places. Women work in environments where there's all these toxic waste. Either they work as domestic workers in other people's homes and use all these toxic things that they're working with, or they work in factories.
Breast cancer deaths have only dropped in white women in the United States. But in black women, breast cancer has increased in all ages. This is an indictment of our healthcare system and also suggests that there may be different exposures involved for some of these women as well.
There is an injustice going on in here. On top of the toxins as well, there's also the issue of racism. By the time African American women have the time or the energy to go for health care and health services, it's too late.
We have more than a right. We live upon this earth. We want to live longer. And the only way we can live longer is discover what our government's doing, as well as what is good for us, what is not good for us, and not allow us to be the laboratory rats upon this earth and discover later whether it's good or bad.
Indifference and conflicting opinions, but we continue to be subjected to treatments that are inadequate.
The treatments for breast cancer are pretty crude. We're really doing the same thing we've been doing for the last couple of decades, which is surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy, or slash burn and poison. That we use them because we don't know better. And once we know really what causes breast cancer, I'm hoping we'll be able to get much more subtle treatments.
The crudeness of treatment also extends to the methods of detecting cancer. Women have pinned their hopes on mammography, believing it will save their lives. But we must remember that mammography does not prevent breast cancer, it only detects it after the disease has occurred. And mammography doesn't always work, especially in younger women. It didn't pick up my tumor. Many scientists believe that even very low doses of radiation from X-rays of our teeth, lungs, and breasts, for instance, can damage genes and initiate cancer. What then the long-term effect on our bodies of the very low doses of radiation we get from mammograms, especially those repeated during our younger ages?
There's a difference for diagnostic purposes and mammography that's used for screening of large numbers of women who aren't sick. Radiation from the mammography can initiate or promote a cancer, and women who are at high risk for cancer are also at high risk from the mammography. I have spoken to radiologists about this, because if the women stay in the mammography program, they will be able to detect it early, they can have surgery, and they're fine. Well, it's not fine, and there's an ethical problem in causing cancer in some women in order to detect it early in other women. We can't just trade women's lives.
Up until I got breast cancer, I assumed that if you had a mammogram, you would find the cancer early, and then, you could have it out. I realized after I was diagnosed what an oversimplification that was, that mammography does not work well at all for women prior to menopause in general. And certainly I had a lump I could feel, and when I had a mammogram, it didn't show up in the mammogram.
There's another problem in mammography which we have to understand, and that is there's two different types of breast cancer. One is slow growing and one is rapidly growing. It's the rapidly growing ones that give us the most trouble. For example, a tumor can double its size in 28 or 29 days. So what you have is if the tumor gets too large, the mammography won't see it. And you need to catch it in the last 28 days where it's between too small to see and large enough to detect with self-examination. If you just have a mammography every 2 years, you're going to miss most of these.
The mammography story is a typical story when somebody assumed it was going to be safe and it would be great, and they mammogrammed everybody starting at an early age, and then 3 or 4 years into it, somebody actually did the calculations and figured out that if we continued to do that, we would cause more breast cancers than we would cure. And then in the true American fashion, we throw it all out. Mammography must be bad. And as usual, the answer is somewhere in between. In women over 50, mammography screening will reduce the death rate of breast cancer by 30%. That's a lot. And in that age group, mammography is definitely worth it. The risk overwhelms or is much less than the benefit. But in women under 50, it's not clear at all. And we haven't been able to, in any studies, show that mammography in women under 50 will save lives.
As with mammography, the use of therapeutic drugs is a mixed blessing. The drug, tamoxifen, is used for treatment and prevention. Thousands of healthy women who have never had breast cancer have taken tamoxifen in a massive study to determine if it will prevent breast cancer.
If a woman has breast cancer and she has what's called estrogen receptor positive breast cancer, then tamoxifen probably makes sense for her to take for a period of no more than 5 years. It will reduce her rate of recurrence. There's clear evidence on that. The idea that women who do not have breast cancer should take tamoxifen as a preventive is a very troubling notion in most cases, because tamoxifen clearly will increase the risk of endometrial cancer and it will increase the risk of liver cancer. And it's a small increase, but it's a very serious concern. And recently, the International Agency for Research on Cancer of the World Health Organization declared that tamoxifen is clearly a human carcinogen. So the idea of taking something that we know causes cancer in humans and giving it to people who do not have the disease is a very troubling notion.
I personally think that we really need to make sure that everything's safe and to try to get rid of things that we don't think are safe. However, the approach of our country and our nation, or the world as a whole, has been to assume things are safe until we prove they're dangerous. And we do this again and again. We do it with silicone implants, we do it with drugs, we're doing it now with hormone replacement therapy. We'll give it until there's proof that it's dangerous. And I think what we have to do is demand that the science is up front, that any new procedure, any new drug, any new technique has to be shown to be safe before it's released and before it gets out in the environment.
So, what are we supposed to do now? For too long, industry and government have minimized the role environmental toxins have played in causing cancer. We must insist that they do a better job by restricting the use of harmful materials and recognizing that the environment plays a role. We are just beginning to understand the full range of problems resulting from exposures to radiation and chemicals. But we now know enough to reduce our use of toxins in our homes, schools, and communities and restrict our exposure to radiation. It's clear that we cannot be healthy if our environment is not healthy.
I think that we have to do a better job of figuring out how to prevent disease that's associated with the environment. It's not that the environment causes all of disease, or certainly it's not that the environment causes all of breast cancer. But unlike many that we know about, you can't pick your parents, you can't change what you ate 30 years ago, you can't go back and have children if you didn't have them. But you can control your exposures to materials in the environment. You can control them, and the government can control them, and the private sector can control them.
So all of us have an individual responsibility to recycle, to petition our politicians and industry, and also to boycott products. And share the word with everybody, everyone that you know. If you know something about milk, if you know something about this farmer or this pesticide, this should be public knowledge. We all have to become activists if we wish to reside on this planet any longer.
I just want to be around to continue on the route that I've been. Stubborn I am. And so that's essentially what my thoughts were. Of course, I Every once in a while, I have to be honest, I think about how I'm going to react if it recurs. And can I really fight out this 5-year period? And I keep saying I am going for our organization this week. So obviously, I think I'm going to make it beyond the 5 years.
My dreams for the future would be that industry would be kinder to the earth, because there's only so much modern technology that you would want. It's like it's gotten out of hand. There's too much of everything now, and the earth is being depleted of all its natural resources.
And for me, in my own culture, in my language,